Welcome to the Utah Homebuyers Quest podcast with Nelson Bars. Our mission is to give you hope, knowledge, and encouragement on your quest for home ownership.
Housing affordability is at its worst point since 1986.
Higher mortgage rates are impacting Utah's housing market. Potential buyers out there being priced out.
It's getting tougher by the day to afford a home.
Many factors are making it very, very difficult with no relief in sight.
Homeownership may seem like an impossible mountain to climb in today's world. We're here to say that it is possible, and we're here to be your guide, to climb with you, to urge you forward all the way to the closing table. We believe in home ownership, and we believe in you.
Well, hello, homebuyers. Welcome back to another episode. My name is Nelson Bars. I'm so excited that you're here. Congratulations on taking another step towards home ownership. Today, we're going to talk about interest rates and closing costs and how they relate to each other, and answer the question, what's more important? Should I be focused on interest rates right now, or should I be focused on closing costs? Do I want a low rate or low fees? All of the marketers in the world right now are focused on rate. We've all been conditioned for it. That's probably what most buyers are thinking about, is where can I get the best interest rate? And that makes sense because the interest rate is an important part of your monthly payment. It's basically the reason why things are so high right now. And so everybody's hyper-focused on interest rates. However, what the advertisements don't make clear is the high fees required to get those sexy interest rates that you see on the billboards or online ads. They also don't tell you what credit score is required, what down payment is required, or any other factors required to get that rate. Most of the advertised rates are just meant to make the phone ring, and then the sales rep on the other side is trained to kind of talk you down off that rate into something more realistic for your situation, unless you are perfect buyer, 800 credit scores, 40% down payment, and so on, right? So let's talk about how rates work. First, you have to understand rates are different from buyer to buyer, and they're also different for every loan program. Someone with a 660 credit score is going to have a much different interest rate quote than someone with a 760 credit score. So we need to have all your information before we can actually quote your best interest rates. The other thing, rates also differ from lender to lender and from broker to broker, depending on how much profit margin they choose to price into the rate quote. So that's one of the reasons why I shop all the lenders, because there are some lenders who they just don't like certain loan programs, and if they're going to do that loan program, they're going to make more money on it to make sure that offsets the risk. So if we price them all, we can find the ones who love your program. I like to say I'll find the lender who loves you best. Something else that you may not know is that every buyer has a choice of what rate to pick off of the lender's rate sheet. I really don't like it when lenders just tell a client, the rate today is 6.5%. Truth is, you have a whole rate sheet to choose from. So even after we get all of your factors priced in, you don't just get 6.5. You could choose 6.3 or 6.25. And each rate on the rate sheet comes with an associated level of discount points. And I want to define what that is. Discount points, sometimes you'll hear it called points or buy down points. These are it's an upfront fee that you pay in exchange for a lower interest rate. And 1 point is 1% of your loan amount. So if you have a $400,000 loan amount, 1 point is a $4,000 fee, and that's going to get you a lower interest rate. Now, this is a permanent buy down. So this is different from what we talked about in the last episode, which is a temporary buy down, like the 2-1 buy down that we'll talk a little bit more about in this episode. So let me just show you some things. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to show you a rate sheet for a typical buyer. And if you're not, I think I can describe it pretty well for the audio listeners. So here's a rate sheet, and you can see I might not just quote 6.5 to somebody. This whole rate sheet is available. So the par rate is the rate that has no points associated with it. So for this borrower, it's 5.99%. And that's as close to zero as this lender is quoting. Okay. Now the par rate, that would be a little higher than anything you would see advertised today. If you want a lower rate, you can pay for it. For example, if this buyer wants to take a quarter off the rate, so drop it down to 5.75, they have to pay 1.6% of their loan amount, 1.6 points, and that's $4,700, and it drops the payment about, about $50, right? So that's how points work. You could go further. You could pay almost $10,000 to take the rate down to 5.375. Now, this is a much higher cost and a much less significant savings than what we talked about last week on the temporary buy downs. It's just not very exciting. When people usually ask me, well, can I pay some points? Can I buy down the rate? And I'm like, yeah, okay, $5,000 gets you a quarter off the rate. And everybody's like, oh, okay, that doesn't make sense, right? Intuitively, it doesn't make sense. However, this is the thing, it adds up over time. If you are going to do this and you look at a 30-year time horizon, there's a lot of savings there, right? Just be careful. A lot of lenders are going to say, we have no points. Instead, they'll call it something else. They could call it an origination fee, a broker fee, an admin fee. It doesn't matter what they call it, even an underwriting fee. To you, it's essentially the same thing, right? It's lender fees, and they use that to be able to offer a lower interest rate. To simplify things, in our office, we don't charge any of those fees. We get our compensation directly from the lender at closing. We have a set contractual amount from them that we get per loan, and that's built into the pricing. The only thing you have to look at is discount points. And do you want to pay them or not? And what is the associated rate and savings? So let's imagine we've got all of your parameters, and we have your rate sheet here in front of you to review. And this is your rate sheet. Which rate would you choose? Which rate should you choose? Is it more important to have a low rate and pay the extra discount points in your closing costs to get it? Or is it more important to have low closing costs with no points or even a lender credit? You see, if you wanted to, instead of taking the par rate of 5.99, if you went up a quarter to 6.25, you would get a lender credit of $1,185 that goes towards your closing costs. And you could get a big lender credit. If you went up to 6.75, you could get a lender credit of $6,000. It's $5,948. So that's the opposite of paying points. You're actually receiving points, and it credits towards your title fees and any other closing costs that are involved, right? So which should you choose? This decision is all about your time horizon. How long do you intend to have this loan? So if you're going to save $100 a month, but it costs $5,000 to do it, well, over 30 years, that's awesome. That's a $36,000 savings in monthly payments. So it makes a lot of sense. But what if it's a starter home and you're only planning to keep it for 3 to 5 years? We can calculate the break-even time for your decision. So $5,000 a cost, $100 a month of savings. It takes 50 months or a little over 4 years to break even. So the question is usually, am I going to keep this home for at least 4 years? If so, then it probably makes a lot of sense to pay the points to get the lower rate, because after the 4-year mark, I start accruing benefit, right? And then I'm saving for the rest of the 30 years of my loan. Just be careful here, because right now it's not just about how long are you going to keep this house, it's how long are you going to keep the loan. Most people right now are hoping that rates will go down, and sometime soon, in the next year or two, we can refinance the mortgage. And I just want to define what that is for those of you who haven't heard the word refinance or don't know what it means. It simply means you get a new mortgage to pay off your old mortgage. So a year from now, if rates have dropped 2 points and you could get something in the 4s, you're going to want it, and you just go get a new loan. We would help you do that, and we would pay off the old loan that we did at closing, right? So it really doesn't make sense right now to pay an expensive rate buy down that takes 4 years of monthly savings to break even, unless you absolutely need it for a lower payment. A lot of people are wasting $5,000, even $10,000 buying this exciting rate. It's going to be an ugly rate in a year. And those permanent buy down points are not refundable. So lenders love them. They make a lot of money on these points. That's the gamble on their side. And in most cases right now, with the consensus being that we are at the top of the rate roller coaster and we're expecting them to start dropping soon, I believe buyers should avoid paying points for a permanent buy down unless you just absolutely have to have a lower payment. I would much rather see you focus on getting a temporary rate buy down. We discussed that, like I said, in the last episode. What this does is it front loads all your interest savings in the first year or two of your loan. The other cool thing about the temporary buy down is that those buy down costs, they're refundable to you if you don't use up the money that is being set aside for the buy down. So unlike the upfront buy down, it's not a big gamble. You actually just use up a little bit of the set aside money every month over the first year or two, depending on the type of contract we do. If you refinance or you sell before the buy down money is used up, the excess funds is yours. It's going to be applied towards your payoff. And in a way, you could think of this as covering some of the costs of a future refinance for you. And incidentally, this concept applies to all closing costs in general. If your plan is to buy now and refinance later, and then I would recommend being hyper-focused on getting the lowest closing costs possible and avoiding points to what extent you can, and especially avoiding hidden fees, especially upfront mortgage insurance. So I'd rather see you even pay a slightly higher monthly payment for a while than $10,000 or more in non-refundable fees on day one at closing. And so keep in mind, there are loan programs that are really attractive. USDA, VA, Utah Housing, these all have awesome benefits like low down payment, lower interest rates, right? But the downside of them is amplified right now because they all have upfront funding fees that are kind of hidden because you don't pay them. They just get rolled into your mortgage, and you pay them when you pay off the loan, when you refinance. So unless you absolutely need one of those programs because you have a lower credit score or you don't have a down payment at all of these are less attractive on the short-term time horizon that we're all focused on. They usually come with, I would say, an FHA loan is probably going to have $6,000 to $8,000 of upfront mortgage insurance rolled in, and that's on top of all of your other closing costs and points and everything else. And even worse, these rolled in fees are actually going to make it more difficult for you to refinance later because you won't have enough equity to qualify for all of the best loan options. So you'll have to wait longer for your home to appreciate before you're eligible for like a conventional loan refinance in the future. So just in summary, as you can see, this is a pretty complex decision, and you can cost yourself a lot of money if all you do is focus on the interest rate. The good news is you don't have to memorize all of this. You just need a good mortgage broker that you can trust. This is what I do for my clients. I like to say my job has 4 parts. Part 1 of my job is to get to know you and your goals and your time horizon. And then another part of my job is to stay up to date with the mortgage market, where rates are going short term, what's going on in the long term with the market, also what loan products are out there and which ones have the lowest cost, the highest costs, and so forth. We're really familiar with all of the options. And then the third part of my job is to distill all of that information from my research into what's useful for you and in your goals and help you understand your options. And once I've done that, you'll be able to make educated, informed decisions, and it'll be easy, right? And then I like to say the fourth part about my job is just to make sure you have a great experience all the way from pre-approval to the closing table and beyond. I would love an opportunity to work with you. As you know, a consultation with me is free, and I would love to help you with a pre-approval or whatever is your next step on this important quest for homeownership. All right, that's the episode today. Thank you for listening. Let's do it again soon.
Thank you for listening to the Utah Homebuyers Quest podcast with Nelson Bars, your place for a strong dose of inspiration and knowledge so you can stay on top of your quest for home ownership. If you have a question or comment for the show, we'd love to hear from you. Visit homebuyersquest.com to record a voice memo or submit your question. You can also join our Facebook community to interact with experts and fellow travelers. Search Homebuyers Quest on Facebook to find the group and join the conversation. But with just a simple click to subscribe, we'll invite you back to the next episode. And remember, we believe in home ownership and we believe in you.